Welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Minneapolis Planning Commission for April 14th, 2025. My name is Chris Meyer and I'm Chair of the Planning Commission. And at this time, I'll ask staff to call the roll to find a quorum.
Commissioner Baxley.
Here.
Campbell is absent. Chowdhury.
Here.
Conley is absent. Gordon.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Meyer.
Here.
Shefty is absent. Thompson is absent. Wagner.
Here.
We have 6 members present.
Let the record show a quorum is present. Next, we'll do the minutes for March 24th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Is there a second? All right. They've been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Those minutes are adopted. Next, we'll proceed to organize our agenda. I'm going to read through the different agenda items. If you were here to discuss one of the items, or you wanted to speak against the staff recommendation, then let us know as I read it off. The staff are recommending that all of our items be on consent except for item number 4. So item number 4, 1501 Johnson Street Northeast, we will discuss that one. Item number 5, let's see. 1801 James Avenue North. Was anyone here to speak against the staff recommendation for item number 5? All right, we'll have that on consent. Item 6, 310, 316, and 3020 12th Avenue South. Was anyone here to speak against the staff recommendation? Okay, I see 3, so we will discuss item 6. Item 7, zoning code text amendment. Is anyone here to speak against the staff recommendation for item 7? All right, that'll be on consent. And item 8, another zoning code text amendment. Is anyone here to speak against staff recommendation for item number 8? All right, we'll have that on consent. So to review, we will discuss items 4 and 6. Items 5, 7, and 8 will be on consent, and then after that, we will have a resolution to recognize an outgoing commissioner. All right, is there a motion to approve that agenda?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That agenda is approved. All right, so starting off with item number 4, 1501 Johnson Street Northeast. Staff is Alex Kohlhaas. Sorry, or is different staff presenting this one? Or? Oh, sorry, I did miss that. So I'll open the public hearing for the consent agenda. I apologize for that. Did anyone want to speak to any of our consent items? All right. Not seeing any, so I will close the public hearing for the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That is adopted. And now we'll move to item number 4.
Thank you, Chair Meyer and Commissioners. For you today is an item for the property at 1501 Johnson Street Northeast. This is a proposal to construct a new 2-story commercial building, a little over 36,000 square feet in gross floor area, intended for a new grocery store and childcare center uses. There are several land use applications that are required and are before you today. This includes a comprehensive plan amendment to amend the future built form guidance in the Minneapolis 2040 comprehensive plan for this property from Transit 10 to Corridor 4, and subsequently an application to rezone the property from the Transit 10 to Corridor 4 built form overlay district, retaining the CM2 primary district. 2 variances, one related to one of our off-street parking regulations and another related to business signage and site plan review. I will note an earlier iteration of this proposal was presented to the Planning Commission Committee of the Whole in June of last year. I believe the discussion at that time focused on the comp plan amendment as opposed to hypothetically a variance to the minimum FAR requirements, so I'll come back to that topic in a minute. I'll just note the applicant has incorporated the feedback from the Committee of the Whole last year into this current proposal, along with other feedback from city staff, and now they're pursuing their land use application decisions as necessary. Brief overview of the subject property and surrounding area. It's this irregular teardrop-shaped parcel with a lot area of just under 98,000 square feet. The most recent lawfully established use of the property has been as a contractor's yard. Access to the subject property is only possible through Johnson Street to the west. Other sides of the property are public right-of-way, including for the I-35W entrance ramp. There is a mix of land uses and densities in the surrounding area, including a public park directly across the street to the west. To the northwest and southwest, you have some low-density residential neighborhoods. To the east is that I-35W right-of-way I mentioned. Further northeast is the Quarry Shopping Center, and to the southeast, on the opposite side of the interstate, is a concentration of production and transportation uses. Here's the primary zoning map for the area, and you can see the subject property in that CM2 zoning along with the rest of the Quarry Shopping Center to the northeast, and the variety that you see in the primary zoning map reflects the variety of uses and densities that I mentioned. Built form overlay district map shows a similar variety, and again, I'll note the built form overlay district boundaries you see here generally align with the future built form map in the 2040 plan. The teal, including the subject property and the quarry, that's all the Transit 10. The green and tan to the west of that is Interior 2 and Parks built form overlay district. And there is a little bit of Corridor 4, that's the orange you see towards the top center along Johnson Street, moving, especially continuing north of 18th. So here is the proposed site plan for the subject property, and this is oriented with north to the left. Again, the proposal is a two-story commercial building for a grocery store and a child care center. They are proposing a total of 100 parking spaces, which would be split into two parking areas, one on either side of the building, and other on-site improvements, including a loading dock and stormwater retention areas, et cetera. Some floor plans provided by the applicant. On the bottom is the main level, which is primarily that grocery store tenant, plus some space for the daycare, and then on the second floor, which is at the top of your screen, that is additional space for the daycare. And two of the proposed elevation drawings. So the top is the north elevation, which would face the larger of the two parking areas. And the bottom of your screen is the west elevation, which would face Johnson Street. One aspect of the plans that I do just want to describe in a little bit more detail relates to some proposed improvements related to bus transit. This would be along Johnson Street on the west side of the property, and there is an existing stop towards the south end of the property, and the applicant's proposal includes relocating that bus stop closer to the center of the subject property, and they're also proposing to make some on-site improvements related to that. You can see on the portion of their site plan, they call out a bus shelter. In the rendering, you can see that shelter and other improvements like real-time transit info display board. They are proposing to add a mid-block crosswalk in this area as well. I just wanted to highlight this a little bit and mostly note that what you see in the plans here, this reflects the applicant's initial proposal regarding this matter. These aspects of the plans are not final. At this time, further discussion is necessary between the applicants, between CPED staff, Public Works staff, and Metro Transit to identify appropriate improvements to be made related to bus transit service in this area, both in the short term and in the long term. I'll also just note this proposal, this development does require an administrative land use application for a minor travel demand management plan, It's expected that on-site bus transit improvements will be a part of the review and decision for that application. So now to focus on the land use applications that are before you today, and I'm going to touch on the comp plan amendment and the rezoning. After that, I'm just going to focus on parts of the other applications where staff is not recommending approval. I'm happy to speak to anything else upon questions from the commissioners. Again, for the comprehensive plan amendment, the request is to amend that future built form guidance for this property from Transit 10 to Corridor 4, and then to subsequently rezone the property from the Transit 10 to Corridor 4 built form overlay district. Now, these actions would mitigate one specific zoning requirement which would otherwise be at issue for this proposal, and that is the minimum floor area ratio requirement. In the Transit 10, the minimum FAR is 1.0. In the Corridor 4, there is no minimum FAR requirement, and the proposed FAR in this case is 0.37. So this would be necessary to facilitate approval of the building bulk that is being proposed. Beyond that specific mechanism that's in play here, staff does find that this proposed comp plan amendment and rezoning have merit by aligning the built form guidance and regulations for the subject property closer to the park and the low-density residential neighborhoods to the west compared to the current alignment with the Quarry Shopping Center on the opposite side of the freeway ramps to the east. So staff does find that the applicable findings for these two applications would be met, and we do recommend approval for each of these. One of the requested variances I mentioned is related to business signage. Just to touch on the zoning code requirements that are in play here. The technical term, we're talking about on-premises signage. Business signage is generally only allowed on a primary building wall, which is defined as a wall facing a street which provides vehicle access to the subject property, or facing a public pathway or an on-site parking area. So in addition to signs that the applicant is proposing on some of the other sides of the building, there is a proposed sign for the grocery store tenant shown on their east elevation drawing. You can see that towards the right-hand side. And the east side of this building would face the freeway entrance and exit ramps. It would not face the street, providing direct access, though there may be some visibility in this case from further away, like the southbound roadway from I-35W. This is not a primary building wall, which is why the variance is required, and staff does recommend denial for this variance. Staff does not find that there is anything unique about the property which creates challenges in complying with the zoning code requirements regarding the location of business signage. The intent of the code around this topic has a few different components, but a large part of it is intended to facilitate signage that is oriented to the street from which the property is accessed. It's not intended to facilitate signage visibility from further distances. Also, just note that this is a Google Street View screenshot from 35. This is a quarter to a half mile to the east. You can see there is a high density of existing business signage in this area, and every property is a little different, and the zoning regulations might apply differently. For example, the quarry is allowed to have signage facing this direction because all of their parking is on that side. So some of the circumstances are a little bit different, but this kind of shows that, again, the high density of signage in this area. The term in the zoning code for one of those findings is sign clutter, and staff does find that this proposed sign on the east side of the subject property would contribute to this high density of signage in this area, and contributes to potential distractions for drivers in this area, including the entrance and exit ramps being in close proximity to the subject property. So staff does not find that the necessary findings are met for the sign variance and recommends denial. Now to talk about their site plan review application, many aspects of this proposal would comply with the applicable site plan review requirements, but there are a total of 4 alternative compliance requests, so I'll just go through those briefly. First, there would be one blank wall on the west side of this building. It would extend 31 feet in length. It would be located just behind those bus transit improvements that I mentioned. The applicants are proposing to have an original artist mural installed on this blank wall, and staff does recommend granting this request for alternative compliance, considering that proposal by the applicant. The next alternative compliance item is to one of the general landscaping and screening requirements. So based on their proposed design, they are required to provide 30 canopy trees on site, and they are proposing 27 within the property lines. They're also required to have 147 shrubs on site, and they are proposing 126 within the property lines. I will note in the right-of-way immediately around the subject property, they are proposing some additional plantings, like another 10 trees and another 25 shrubs, mostly towards the bottom left in terms of how you're looking at it on your screens here. Staff does recommend granting this request for alternative compliance, considering the unique shape of the property, the property lines being in unusual locations, and there's an excess of right-of-way in this location, and staff does find that satisfies the findings for landscaping and screening alternative compliance. Another request for alternative compliance is specific to the parking and loading, landscaping, and screening requirements. As you know, all parking areas with street frontage are required to provide a landscape yard that's at least 7 feet wide and meeting other specifications. They would not be complying with this requirement specifically in what is the northwest portion of the property, which is towards the bottom left on your screen here. That 7-foot landscape yard would essentially be in the public right-of-way, which does not meet the letter of the law in terms of the site plan review requirement, but is something we can consider under alternative compliance, and staff does recommend granting that. The last request for alternative compliance is another specific requirement regarding parking and loading, landscaping, and screening. Specifically, each parking space is required to be within 50 feet of the center of an on-site deciduous tree. There are 8 parking spaces which would not satisfy this requirement based on the plans that have been submitted, and those are in the southern parking area, so towards the right-hand side of your screen here. The plans do show what looks like a tree symbol, but it's not specifically labeled with enough detail to verify that it satisfies a specific requirement, so it could just be an issue with labeling. Staff does not find that this would satisfy the findings for alternative compliance, and staff does not recommend granting this particular item. We do have a condition of approval that we are recommending with site plan review, which would effectively address this issue. In conclusion, just a slide summarizing the staff recommendations for the applications which are before you today. Again, I'm happy to go back and speak about anything in more detail, including things that I didn't touch on specifically in my presentation. I also have a slide listing all of the conditions of approval that we are recommending for site plan review. I'm not going to go through all of these individually, but I'm happy to speak to any if anyone has any questions. I'll just note the first 2 are kind of standard boilerplate conditions that we include for a lot of these new construction projects for site plan review. Conditions 3 through 11 are to address specific aspects of the plans which, as they've been submitted, they don't explicitly demonstrate compliance with specific zoning code requirements. So we just have some conditions to make sure that is addressed in further plan sets. There were no written public comments received for this item other than a few documents that were passed along by the applicant from their comp plan amendment engagement. I believe the applicants and their representatives are in attendance during today's hearing. This concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you for that presentation. So regarding the sign, that image you showed to demonstrate the number of signs, so those are all signs in the quarry, right? And so because there are a lot of signs in the quarry, you're saying this would add to the clutter?
In short, yes.
Okay. And then can you walk us through like the safety implications? Like, so the idea is if there are signs distracting people, that may cause a crash if they're looking at them? Like,
the logic, yes. Especially if you look here, you can see the entrance and exit ramps. If you're on southbound I-35W, excuse me, going past the subject property, you have vehicles entering and exiting the main roadway right as you're going by the subject property. This is, that in particular kind of increases the potential for conflict, for lack of a better term, between vehicles, and having these additional visual distractions, for lack of a better term, increases that potential for conflict.
Okay, and then one other question for Kimberly. We recently had the council there was an appeal to the council on a sign request for the one in North Loop was a Chase Bank or whatever. What was the outcome of that?
Correct. So you all may recall the Planning Commission heard an item similar to this, which was a variance to have a sign on a non-primary building wall at 411 Washington Avenue and other associated addresses. That was a JP Morgan Chase Bank sign. The Planning Commission recommended denial. Staff had a similar set of findings there, that there was no practical difficulty that constituted a need for flexibility on the sign regulations. Staff recommended denial. The Planning Commission denied the application. It was appealed to the City Council. The City Council upheld the Planning Commission's decision on that, and the sign was denied.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff before we?
I have a question.
Oh.
My question is in terms of signage also. So these are signage on the building. What other signage is allowed on the site? You know, like sometimes they have the big signs that are separate from the wall signs. And I'm just curious, because obviously they want this for visibility and to draw people to their store, and clearly the freeway is a great place to wave your sign, right? So what other options are there, or what things are they planning on doing?
I would defer to the applicants if they have other sign ideas beyond what's on the plans here, but the zoning code does allow other types of signage, like what we call a monument sign, you know, something that has a solid base but isn't attached to the building. Usually it's right near like a driveway entrance or something like that to the parking lot. There are limitations on the number of monument signs that can be placed on a property, or in addition to, you know, wall signs, other signs attached to buildings, like what we call a projecting sign in the zoning code. Some people call it like a blade sign that sticks out from the wall face, or something like a roof sign. But again, generally for zoning code purposes, the intent is for these to be oriented towards in this case, it's one street that provides direct access to the property. The code is not intended to provide visibility for, when we're talking about business signage, the property that the business is on. It's not intended to provide visibility, say, to a freeway exit ramp, even though in this case it is very close by. But we do get other types of inquiries for signage like this. Usually the property is a little bit further away, which is part of the reason why they want a bigger sign, a taller sign, something facing this direction. But it doesn't, in terms of staff analysis and recommendation, it speaks to that spirit and intent of the ordinance is a big part of that.
Other questions? Commissioner Bender.
Thank you, Chair Meyer. Thank you for the presentation. Really well done, and also the write-up was really well done as well. I appreciate the detail. You talked about this particularly in the write-up, also in your presentation. Could you speak a little bit more about staff's conversations regarding the T10 to, is it Corridor 4 comp plan change, and getting on board with that, and why like this site specifically resulted in you getting on board with that, when we've seen some sites in the past that they went for this and we kind of told them tough luck? And then as a related to that, do you have any concerns about kind of a precedent-setting nature of this comp plan amendment in terms of downzoning transit 10 to C4 or C6?
To speak to the first question, I think there's a couple of pieces of that. If you look at the built form overlay district map, it shows this one large teal area as all the transit 10, including the subject property and the quarry. That big connector in between them is not public, or is not private property. It is public property that, just for symbology purposes, also gets that teal area. But it helps visually make that connection between the subject property and the quarry. But if you can ignore that, the subject property is really more closely connected, if for no other reason geographically, shares a street with the neighborhoods to the west, including the park and the low-density residential neighborhoods. There is a bit of a, for lack of a better term, a precedent with Corridor 4 along Johnson Street to the north. There's some more to the southwest along Broadway that's just off screen here. So seeing the variety that is, the variety of existing development density and the variety just on the built form overlay map, we could make the connection between the subject property being more closely aligned with those neighborhoods to the west and directly aligned with the Corridor 4 in the nearby area. And there's also the matter of kind of the history of development proposals at this property, where there was a previous proposal back in 2019 for something that would have been a larger building, would have satisfied that minimum FAR requirement in the Transit 10. A lot has happened in the development world since then, both, I can't speak for the specific history of this property, but in general, and the overlapping timelines of that project with adopting the 2040 plan and the built form overlay districts, I think may have kind of informed that conversation. In terms of precedent, ultimately when we're evaluating these, we do need to evaluate each individually, and our analysis for another property could result in a different perspective in terms of those individual findings that we are required to articulate for each project. So there can be some shared circumstances between different proposals, but ultimately we do need to evaluate each one individually.
And Commissioner Meganer, if I may add to that, I think we saw as part of our consent motion tonight a host of mapping updates to Minneapolis 2040. Because while we're close to perfect, I think we can admit that we didn't completely nail it on every parcel the first time, and we acknowledge that with a series of things that we had considered errors or maybe, mapping considerations that we had overlooked with the initial adoption. This was not considered an error or something we overlooked, but anytime we have a request from an applicant for a comp plan amendment, kind of the first question we ask ourselves is, could we have drawn a different conclusion here? All the information that we put into the algorithm kind of led us to Transit 10 the first time, but is it possible that we could have drawn another conclusion here? The intent of the Transit 10 district is to be applied along high-frequency transit routes adjacent to metro stations and neighborhoods near downtown and in downtown. This, as Alex noted, was lumped in with the Transit 10 given its proximity to the quarry, but it doesn't share that same access and the same adjacency to transit that some of those neighboring parcels do, which is one of the main considerations that we used in evaluating whether or not we could have drawn a different conclusion here. The Corridor 4 was proposed by the applicant,
Yep.
so that's why you're seeing that.
Thank you both. That definitely answers my question.
All right, any other questions for staff before we move to the public hearing? All right, thank you, Alex. I will open the public hearing. Is the applicant here to speak? Come on up, introduce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Chairman Meyer and Commissioners, I'm Don Gerberding, Master Properties.
Can you speak a little closer to the mic?
Oh. It's hard for us tall people. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm here today to speak about our project at 1501 Johnson Northeast. We've been through the site characteristics, excuse me, a little over 2.2 acres, and we're proposing a grocery store and a daycare. The daycare, one of the real attributes of this site is the city park across the street. Hence, we wanted to increase transit to this site and putting in a crosswalk so that we have safe passage for the daycare kids to walk right across the street. We went through an extensive community engagement. LENA, L-N-E-N-A, which is the Lower Northeast Neighborhood Association, formerly both Beltrami and Northeast Park Neighborhood Associations were combined. We met with LENA and also their Community and Housing Livability Committee. The Business Association, we distributed project information, flyers to encourage the neighbors to attend the presentation at the LENA meeting, and we erected a 4x8 sign on the site talking about the future project. So we're very excited to kick off this project. It's been a long road to positively develop this very oddly shaped parcel. It's shaped like a double-headed arrow with extreme narrow points at each end, which makes portions of the site unbuildable. It's isolated from the traffic grid. It's an island bordered only by one street, Johnson Street to the west, with the freeway and the freeway entrance ramp surrounding the remaining side to the parcel. So in our parlance, it has one street only. Technically it's a double corner lot. Site has been used as a construction yard, currently used as a non-conforming storage yard for a vehicle towing company. The project brings two of the most desirable uses aligned with the goals intended in the 2040 plan: daycare and grocery. We've been working with Met Transit. They currently have a location that's about a half a block to the south, and the most proximal northern transit station is at the post office, which is north of the quarry. So in anticipation of the future BRT, we have been working with Met Transit, and they are agreeable to relocate that southern transit stop to our project. And it'll also provide better transit for the grocery patrons. So I'd like to speak real quickly to the sign variance matter, and just a few short comments. According to one of the requirements, the proposed signage will not significantly increase or lead to sign clutter in the area, or a result in the sign that's inconsistent with the purpose of the zoning district, corridor mixed use. All proposed signage will be in compliance with the provisions of the signage code. The proposed signage is solely for identification of the tenants from 35W. The technical reason a signage variance is required at this site is Interstate 35W and the 35W on-ramp, which abut the property, are not designated / recognized by staff as streets. Therefore, according to the code, signage is not allowed on a non-primary building wall if it doesn't abut a street. Now remember, this is a very uniquely shaped parcel sitting up above the freeway on more than two sides. MnDOT property surrounds about 220 degrees of this parcel. So although 35W and the ramp function like a street, they're not recognized as a street. If there were a building behind our structure, then signage might impact the view corridor of that building if it's not on a primary building wall. We all understand signage on the street makes sense, but signage on the back of a building could be problematic for other neighbors. There are no neighbors. There is no building on the backside, and never can a building be constructed on the backside because it's all MnDOT property. So there is no one who can be negatively impacted by a sign or the proposed signage. The configuration of the parcel, elevated above 35W with the steep MnDOT slopes, is certainly not located in a typical city block grid pattern for which the code was written. It's unique. Because of the uniqueness of this site, the non-primary building wall is the most prominent facade for our building tenants. To deny a business the opportunity to display signage to 35W is counterintuitive for our city's efforts to support the building of communities and promoting businesses to support those communities. I have a couple photographs which show precedent of existing signage on non-primary building walls on 35W, which are located less than a mile from this subject site. Could we turn on, please, the document camera? Will that project landscape or portrait?
Yeah.
All right, let me turn it this way. And this is on 35W, a stone's throw from the building, heading north, and prominent display of signage. Here's another example. This is heading south on 35W at Washington Avenue. And again, MnDOT property abuts both of these buildings as they abut the freeway. So that ends my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Are there questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is anyone else here to testify to this item? All right, not seeing any, so I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, any discussion or motions? Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Chair Meyer. I'm never good at making these motions here. For some reason, it's so different from what I'm used to. I'm sensitive, as I was the last time, to business owner trying to drive traffic. I don't know if anybody up here, does anyone live northeast? That's right across from, Chair Meyer probably knows this from the park board, it's right across from what used to be called Roseacre Park. No, what do we call it? This is terrible that I suddenly can't remember. It's the pool, right? And huge park. And I do know that that area, that corner goes to like largely nothing. It's kind of a dead-ended nothingness. So I mean, I was swayed by the idea. I recognize what staff was saying about challenges with drivers, and completely, I think we have 1,000 other things that might distract us in life driving than a sign for a grocery store. So I don't know if that's a motion worth carrying or if that's just a discussion point, but that's where I am. I'd be happy to hear from others if they considered it as well.
Okay, so you'd like to, you're considering a motion to grant the sign variance? To
grant the sign, yes. How would you propose that I even say that?
I was going to ask Kimberly to provide guidance, because in addition to the regular findings that we have to have, there are the additional 2 sign variance findings. Can you walk us through that, Kimberly?
Correct. So any motion that is not consistent with staff recommendation would need to come with findings. So it would be the standard 3 variance findings that results in a finding that there's a practical difficulty on the site that results in a need for flexibility on the sign regulations. So, you know, 1, what unique circumstances are there that are unique to this site that have not been created by the property owner? You know, then we look at consistency with the spirit and intent of the zoning code and the comp plan, and potential for off-site impacts, which gets into the 2 additional variance findings related to sign adjustments. The first one, I think, was essentially met related to the materials and installation of the sign. And then the second one, which was not met, which was largely focused on the sign clutter argument that was made by staff.
So just to be clear, since I don't ever really make motions here, I've tried to talk about it, but we can't just make a motion and discuss it. We have to like sort of judicially override staff with some evidentiary hearing. That's the
There are required legal findings that need to be made for every land use application that comes before the city. So staff proposes a set of legal findings with the staff reports that are included in your packets.
Yep.
Whenever you adopt staff recommendation, you're adopting the set of legal findings that was proposed by staff in the staff report. If you don't intend to go with staff recommendation and adopt those findings would need to be made on the floor as part of the motion.
That makes total sense. Thank you for that. I guess, I was thinking maybe like, because Met Council owns the land, because there's a precedent set at these other locations. And because I don't remember what the last one was. I really would have had to listen a lot better and write these things down. So I won't be making a motion at this present, but I mean, if someone else, comes up with this, I am sensitive to it. I recognize that most people would love, I'm the kind of person who sometimes, like that Bobby and Steve's, I've actually used that location where I'm like, I need gas, and I'm just like, oh, there's a gas station. So I'm sensitive to that. So if someone else wants to help me come up with other findings, I appreciate it. Yes.
So I guess I'm undecided on the sign. I'm open to it. I want to walk through each of the 5 findings that we would need to make. And so of the 5, how many did staff find in favor of the applicant? Are all 5 against them?
Yeah, I believe maybe I apologize, I don't have the language in front of me, but I believe there is the one finding specific to compliance with other specific sign standards in the zoning ordinance. I believe that was found to be met. The other 4 were found to be not met.
So which one was met? Is that the 4th one? So let's walk through each of them. So number 1, challenges exist in. Oh, go ahead, Camille. I was just going to read each of the 5, and then. So challenges exist in complying with the ordinance because of circumstances unique to the property. The unique circumstances were not created by persons presently having an interest in the property and are not based on economic considerations alone. So you found against the applicant on that one?
Correct.
Okay. 2, the property owner or authorized applicant proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner that will be in keeping with the spirit and intent of the ordinance and the comprehensive plan. You found against the applicant on that one?
Correct.
Okay. The proposed variance will not alter the essential character of the locality or be injurious to the use or enjoyment of other properties in the vicinity. If granted, the property variance will not be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare or the general public of those utilizing the property or nearby properties. And you found against?
Correct.
On that one. And these are the ones unique to the sign variance. The sign adjustment will not significantly increase or lead to sign clutter in the area or result in a sign that is inconsistent with the purpose of the zoning district in which the property is located. And you found against them on that?
Correct.
So this one must be the one you found in favor. Okay, so the sign adjustment will allow a sign that relates in size, shape, materials, color, illumination, and character to the function and architectural character of the building or property on which the sign will be located. So you found that one met?
That is the one that
Correct.
we found that finding is satisfied, which aligns with the applicant's proposal.
Okay. Yeah, so if we wanted to make the motion, we'd have to find 4 alternative findings. Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, so I'm inclined to at least have the discussion too as well. So my sort of initial thoughts are that the argument about the freeway not being a road, I have been driving over there recently, and it's a freeway, it's not a road, and it seems consistent with the precedents that you provided for us in terms of other signage along the freeway. And I am not convinced that it's going to cause unduly add to the signage clutter in that area. So those are at least, so I'm leaning towards allowing the applicant to have the sign on that part of the building, just because of the location and the structure, the layout of the property, et cetera. So thank you.
Commissioner Conley, did you have yours up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I found the applicant's explanation very compelling. One of the questions that I had, and the conversation around gas stations came up, and those are typically the monument signs, which is what I think you were referring to earlier, is what are the alternative signage that the applicant could potentially use, if not on the building. So I guess maybe this is a question for the applicant. Is a monument sign something that has been considered, or were alternatives discussed? Is that something that you would, could do if there isn't practical difficulty found?
I will just note, is the public hearing closed?
It is.
Okay.
In the past, we've still allowed it. I can reopen the public hearing if you'd like to. I'll reopen the public hearing to take this question. If you want to come up and answer this question, please.
Commissioner, we did look at alternative signages options, and a monument sign in this location is not permitted under a different section of the zoning code, in that the building is close to the property line on the east side, which is MnDOT property, and we could not comply with a monument sign and meet the setback requirements. The other reason is we thought a simple, identifiable business sign on the side of the building was much less intrusive than a large monument sign.
I appreciate that. That makes sense. Thank you.
While you're back up here,
Sure.
can you recap what your recommendations are for findings? What, because you have this in your letter, right? What were your recommended findings for the sign?
For the three findings of fact?
4. You gotta do 4.
So there are 3 variance findings that apply to all variance requests, and then sign variances have 2 additional specific findings that, and Todd probably put the findings together when he submitted the application material, so I don't know if you don't have them directly in front of you, they would be in the packet.
Full disclosure, I'm the fill-in guy tonight.
Oh.
The project manager for this particular project is called an appendix, and so he's not here. I can't speak directly to it, although to go back to summarize my comments, that uniqueness to the site, and it will not impact or cause undue harm. And then the third one, I believe, was, help me, Kimberly.
Spirit and intent of the, reasonableness and spirit and intent of the ordinance.
Correct. Reasonableness, and the fact that these are businesses, highly desirable businesses, that we thought it's reasonable that they be able to identify themselves on 35W.
All right. Any other questions before we reclose the public hearing? All right, thank you.
Okay.
I'll just note for commissioners quick, the applicant's letter is on page 46 of the packet if you want to read through his findings on that.
All right, so I'll close the public hearing again. Other discussion from commissioners? So I also don't find that this adds clutter. I'm interested in what other commissioners, I mean, Commissioner Thompson spoke to it, but any other commissioners have thoughts on staff's finding that it could be dangerous to have signs. I do agree with the applicant that there don't seem to be any neighbors that would be negatively harmed by this, which is a difference between this and the previous one that we rejected from JP Morgan. Commissioner Jones?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Chowdhury.
I'm sorry, did I miss you?
I actually have been driving that quite a bit recently for other reasons, like going right in front of the core racing, and I haven't been, I don't see any complications, although there's not a building there now, but at least it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of activity other than people just getting off the freeway and getting over on Johnson or 18th, so.
Commissioner Chowdhury?
Thank you, Chair Meyer. I have a question for staff, just to kind of like go back to that monument sign question. I know we heard from the applicant that they were told that they would be unable to due to other zoning code, but that was something that you had mentioned in your presentation. I'm wondering if you have any analysis on possible other signage options, including the monument sign that would comply with current zoning code?
That's not analysis that I have done prior to this. I evaluated the signs that were on the plans that were submitted. Personally, I don't recall discussing alternate sign ideas or proposals with the applicant team prior to today. We considered what was on the plans, and again, most of the signs that they have provided on the other sides of the building would be in compliance with applicable zoning code requirements. Speaking generally, the way our zoning ordinance is structured around business signage like this is largely to limit what has been characterized as a proliferation of signage on a lot of our commercial corridors. So our zoning regulations for business signage are not as permissive as they have been in the past.
Would you be able to talk to the applicant about other signage options?
Yeah, after this hearing, we are certainly available to talk with applicant teams through alternate proposals. If for signs that require or that would comply with the zoning code, they don't need to come through for another hearing. It's only for when it is a sign variance that it would come back before the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustment.
Thank you. Yeah, colleagues, I agree with much of what was said up here in terms of just like, is this going to be additional clutter or not, right? I don't really think so, just based off of the fact that there's already signage. And I think the place where I'm struggling is finding a fact around satisfying that clause around challenges exist in complying with ordinance because of unique circumstances to the property. I mean, if another commissioner has a compelling finding for that, I would be interested, but I'm currently not seeing that. And when we were talking about the other signage case a couple planning commissions ago and then on to city council, like the defining part of that conversation was we have to operate under the current laws that exist before us and make a decision based off of that. Like, we can't use a variance opportunity to create a precedent or legislate differently. And I feel like as a council, we made that decision to uphold the decision of the Planning Commission because of potential precedent setting and unintended consequences on non-primary building or primary building wall signage. And so if there is a compelling, unique circumstance to the property that we can find, I think then we would be able to just legally be able to satisfy the needs of this variance. But that's just not something that I'm seeing, especially if there are other signage opportunities here to support the business, right? Like, I love shopping at the quarry, shopped at the quarry often when I was a college student. Like, it's a notable, iconic area for many people to get what they need, and so it's important that you get the signage that you need to continue bringing in those customers that rely on that area. But this feels like kind of a sticking point for me at this moment.
Commissioner Baxley.
Thank you, Chairman Meyer. I tend to agree with Commissioner Chowdhury. I think I'm struggling to find a challenge in compliance. I think it's a nice to have, but that isn't justification for the additional signage. It is a unique site, but I can't determine a challenge that the ordinance can't be met. So I'm going to be voting to support staff findings on this. I will like to say I do appreciate the applicants listening to the committee of the whole, modifying the proposal in such a way it's a much better project than we saw before. So thank you very much for that. Thanks.
Would you like it to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to support staff findings on this.
Okay. First, is there a second to the motion? All right. Commissioner Chowdhury.
I did want to just note to the applicant, as council members, when we had the discussion about the signage for JP Morgan, there was a discussion again about, like, we have the legislation that we currently have, and out of that, there were council members that were discussing potential ordinance change regarding signage, and so I would just advocate for you to reach out to the council member of the area and inquire about that discussion, and see if there's anything in there that might help support what you're trying to do here, and then you may, depending on how that goes, you may or may not even need a variance for this. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew about that.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Meyer. And a compelling argument has been made, and I respect that. I do have one quick question for staff, just because I clearly am not the queen of the signage ordinances. Is this a city ordinance? Does it come through with the Minneapolis 2040 plan? How did this come up? I'm just curious the structure of hierarchy of what we're dealing with when it comes to the signs.
Correct. Sign regulations have been found in the zoning code probably
Forever.
back to the 1924 code. I
Yep.
guess I'd have to dig that out. Certainly back to the 1963 code. They're a primary tenet of zoning codes nationwide. So not related to the 2040 plan. You know, there are some tweaks that have been made over time. It's probably one part of the code that's gets a lot of attention as Supreme Court cases come down related to content and whatnot. So yes, primary component of the zoning code.
The
itself.
zoning code. Perfect, thank you. So we're not turning any parts of the city into Times Square where it's just like a blast of everything. Okay, just wanted to be clear. Thanks.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the public hearing is closed, sorry. All right.
Y'all still talking?
Yep.
Is it this sign? I have a question.
I mean, I don't know how to describe it.
Okay. Would you care to understand and read my sign? Please, can you?
No, sorry.
Now,
You can find
I
the,
have enough, I mean, are y'all gonna say no? Can I get a motion on that?
we've already reopened the public hearing once.
Well,
You can find this, you can find the sign in the application online. All right.
Well, I mean,
So we have a motion on the table. Commissioner Conley?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to also, since staff was up here, I know that I asked before about the continued conversation, or we had a conversation about the continued conversation with the applicant about alternative signage. So I know that there was some concern about the being intrusive in the neighborhood, et cetera, when a big monument sign could possibly do that. But looking at ways where alternative signage would fit within the requirements and what sort of options might be on the table aside from what the vote results in today. I just would encourage that conversation to continue. Thank you.
All right. Is there any further discussion?
I'm discriminated against. I'm abused because of my addiction. You know, I'm getting hurt. I was not counted in. My sons, I'm
Okay.
punished because my disease.
Thank
of
you. The
addiction.
public hearing is over.
I'm punished because of that. Why am I punished? Because are you punishing people with cancer?
No.
Are you punishing people with AIDS?
No.
I'm hurt.
Okay.
I mean, at the last minute of this, I haven't seen my son, and I don't know.
Can
hurt.
we have an escort, please?
I'm about to lose my mind now. You know what I'm saying? I don't know where my baby is.
Okay.
I need to find my son. I can't deal with it no more.
Okay.
Where's my son?
So we have a motion on the floor to approve the staff findings. Is there any further discussion about this?
Addiction disease. Why? Why am I getting
Yep.
hurt?
All right, not seeing any further discussion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay, Commissioner Baxley,
Aye.
Chowdhury, Oh, and stepped away for a
We'll
moment.
hold it open for.
Conley.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Thompson.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
So at this moment, we have 6 ayes and 0 nays. Oh, I'm sorry. How did I miss you, Meyer? Chair Meyer.
Aye.
Okay. And then Commissioner Chowdhury, do you have a vote on the motion?
This is the motion to adopt the staff findings.
Aye.
Okay. So that's 8 ayes and 0 nays. Thank you.
Thank you. That is adopted. And we will now move on to our next discussion item, which is item number 6. 3010, 3016, and 3020 12th Avenue South, and staff is Hillary Dvorak.
Good afternoon, or I guess good evening, Commissioners. I'm Hillary Dvorak, a Principal Planner in CPED, Land Use Design and Preservation. This is an item, a comprehensive plan amendment that you will be asked to vote on today. The site is located at 3010, 3016, and 3020 12th Avenue South. It is located on the west side of 12th Avenue, one parcel south of East Lake Street. The 3010 12th Avenue South property is vacant, and the properties located at 3016 and 3020 are occupied by single-family homes. The future land use guidance for these 3 properties is urban neighborhood, and the built form guidance is interior 3. These properties are zoned UN2, urban neighborhood district, and located in the interior 3 built form district. Excuse me. The applicant owns the adjacent property to the north, the one located on East Lake Street at 1119, East Lake Street. This property is occupied by a former funeral home. The future land use guidance for that site is corridor mixed use, and the built form guidance for the site is corridor 6. That property is zoned CM2 and located in the corridor 6 built form district. The applicant is proposing to combine the properties located at 3010, 16, and 20 12th Avenue South with the property located at 1119 East Lake Street to create one development site. The future land use guidance of urban neighborhood and the built form guidance of interior 3 does not allow for the density of the project or the height of the building that is being proposed. To allow greater density and a taller building, the applicant is proposing to amend the future land use guidance and the built form guidance in the comprehensive plan. Since the adoption of Minneapolis 2040, the applicant came forward with a proposal to combine the properties on 12th Avenue with the property on East Lake Street to create one development site, which was not a known proposal at the time the comprehensive plan was adopted. This offers a new opportunity to construct a mixed-use development that is compatible with the surrounding area, increases the supply of housing, supports the policies for properties located on a designated goods and services corridor, and in line with the extent of the corridor mixed-use district in the corridor 6 district on the east side of 12th Avenue South. On the map in front of you is the future land use map from the city's Minneapolis 2040 plan. The yellow is urban neighborhood. The salmon-y color to the north of the red box, that is the corridor mixed use. The applicant is combining these properties, and they are asking to go from yellow to salmon, or from urban neighborhood to corridor mixed use. We are recommending that you support that amendment. Surrounding properties are guided for both urban neighborhood and corridor mixed use, future land use. And interior 2, interior 3, and corridor 6 built form. The extent of both the corridor mixed use, future land use category and the corridor 6 district along the north-south streets, both north and south of East Lake Street, vary remarkably between Chicago Avenue and Bloomington Avenue. The proposed extent of the corridor mixed use district and the corridor 6 district would closely match the extent of the same districts on the east side of 12th Avenue. Again, for orientation, this is the built form map. The red box is the site in question. Those 3 properties are guided for interior 3. The property that the applicant is proposing to tie this one to is the one at 119 East Lake, which is in the corridor 6, so the wine-colored color on the map. And as you can see, as I go from future land use and also built form, as I toggle between the two, the extent of the one that they want to go to varies greatly north and south of Lake Street from east to west. This also gets back to a note that Kimberly had mentioned about comprehensive plans and that we take a look at each one as they come in once the comp plan is amended. Would we have done something differently had we known that these were one property site? I think the answer in this question is yes, given our recommendation. The proposed amendments would better align to the adjacent future land use and built form designations and the policy guidance for designated goods and services corridors, which is East Lake Street. Amending the future land use and built form guidance would allow greater flexibility to meet the comprehensive plan goals, including increasing the supply of housing near transit and improves access to commercial goods and services. Additionally, the project's location promotes public health through walking, biking, and access to nature and reduces vehicle emissions from single occupancy vehicle trips for daily necessities. We are recommending that you approve the comprehensive plan amendment. This will allow them to move forward with a rezoning and the other land use applications that are required for the development, which have not yet been identified. They do have some preliminary plans in the project, but again, you are not approving the project, you are approving the comp plan amendment. The design and the review of the actual development will come later. I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
I have a question. Hillary, could you talk about, sorry.
Nope, I'm sorry, I could not.
I'll wait to be called.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to wait if you want to go first.
I just had questions about like what, if it's changed in we approve the comp plan amendment, sort of what does it look like in terms of height and density, like now as compared to if it gets more dense? So are we talking a 6-story building, a 10-story building?
They are proposing, what's in the packet, what they presented to the neighborhood group through their outreach that they needed to do and the engagement that they needed to do for this process, was to go to a 7-story building. Okay. This allows them to go to 6. They would need premiums as part of a land use application to get to 7. We have not started discussing those specifics of the project yet.
I'm sorry, so what do they need for a 6-story building?
This would, amending the built form from interior to 3 to corridor 6 would allow them to build to 6 stories. If they wanted to exceed 6 stories, they could go to 10 with premiums in the zoning code. But what they're showing you in the packet and what they showed the neighborhood was a 7-story building. So this would allow them to get to 6, and they would need premiums to go to 7.
And can you tell me just really quickly how a premium's granted?
They are administrative, so say they enclose all the parking, they can get a premium. They provide a daycare, they can get a premium. They have a grocery store, they can get a premium. If they do certain things in our code, we give them the premium.
And those are administratively granted?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Chair Meyer. I have a few questions. Interior 3 currently allows what kind of a built form? I'm not the...
Up to 3 stories.
Up to 3 stories. And how many units? Or does that
It does not dictate number of units. It's all about the mass of the building on the site. So it could be 1, it could be 30. It depends on how many they could fit. But it's not a apples to apples comparison of density and height.
Okay. So who owns, I'm looking at this map, 1115 East Lake. It's kind of like cornered, yeah, yep, yeah.
It is an adjacent property owner. They have tried to purchase it. It would make the site a lot more sense in the development site from the planner's perspective at least, but that owner is not willing to sell. So they are moving forward without that person.
What would happen to that owner and what is currently there? Do you know?
It's a parking lot, and okay. I don't know what they're proposing to do with it, but it's a parking lot.
Okay. My last question at the moment is, so looking good, you're at the same picture that I'm on. So you said essentially it was taking what's in the red and turning it into the new zoning code, which I'm guessing is interior 3 to corridor 6. So
Correct.
Corridor 6 is right at the edge on Lake Street.
Yes.
So what is the cream color as we get toward the middle? What is that zoning code?
Down here,
Yeah.
this is interior 2, so
Which
lower
is-
density.
Right, so we're essentially taking, I guess my point in asking that is that we would be making this high-density Lake Street corridor stuff right next to like a duplex.
Correct. And that's the pattern that you see on the map. All of this purple is corridor 6 next to interior 3 next to interior 2.
So as you're looking at it as at 11th Avenue, right, all that corridor 6 and even 13th, was that originally that way, or was that also a variance? Do you happen to know?
No, I mean, that's how it is
Or I
right
mean,
now.
a change. Oh, it was.
That's how it was guided
listed
when
out.
we adopted 2040.
May I ask why 13th and 11th have this and not 12th?
I'm going to assume that they were looking at property ownerships. I mean, Lake Street has specific guidance because it's the commercial corridor. We want
Right.
our active uses up there.
Mhm.
And so this, I mean, you can't, okay. This is one property that comes
Right.
down to the TLE. This is all one property. So I'm assuming that these properties are guided the same because
So
they're one property.
they're already one. Okay, got it.
At the time, we did not know that these 3 properties were in conjunction under same ownership as this one. So I think had we known that, we would have most likely done that because that would have been the land use guidance for that density on the corridor.
So, based on this mapping, is it safe to assume that those going up on the picture on 11th that are all purple were all essentially owned by the same landowner? Yeah, those.
Up here?
Yep, yeah. Just because on the map, it just looks a little bit out of place, why they were all put in there in those
Yeah,
tiny.
I can't think of what's right. I mean, this is the Midtown Exchange parking garage. You just
Yep.
approved a clinic for this site. This is
Yep, the
Midtown
Midtown Global Mart,
Exchange.
yep.
I can't think of what those properties are across the street.
I'm just curious the impact on the neighborhood. Do we know so they're currently, what are those, they're single-family homes currently?
Where?
The ones that he's suggesting, or the applicant is suggesting to switch, the ones in red?
One is
Yeah.
vacant and 2 are single-family
Okay.
homes.
Okay. Sorry, I was taking notes as you were talking. I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
you're welcome.
Any other questions? Commissioner Conlon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is more me thinking out loud a little bit. So I completely understand why we would want the corridor 6 along Lake Street. So you can go down Lake Street right now and see there's rapid transit coming through. There's business. It's our business corridor, the business corridor of the South Side. I'm comfortable saying that. It's when it starts to move into the neighborhood that I cringe a little bit. Like, I get why, like, our job right now is to approve the amendment, which is moving from interior 3 to corridor 6, but I see why it's interior 3. It's that Lake Street revitalization, density, etc., facing and abutting Lake Street is important and makes sense. But then you see, as you move in, these are streets that are extraordinarily narrow. They are, parking on both sides. Like, it's hard driving through there because I've done it multiple times. As the density moves into the block, facing me, I can see how that can be a struggle for the homes that are already there. So I'm trying to get to a space where I can understand. I really appreciated the pointing out that a lot of these are the same ownership, what's in the deep purple here. But yeah, as you move into the block, it's hard to convince me to move that to corridor 6. Everything really is on Lake Street, facing Lake Street, especially at these really high traffic intersections where there's already a lot going on with, as you explained, the Midtown Global Market. You've got several businesses along there, churches. There's been a number of different new housing developments along this stretch too. So I don't know, the fact that there's homes already there and then you move inward and it goes down to the interior 3. I don't know, I'm talking out loud, but I'm trying to make sense of keeping it closer to Lake Street and as opposed to it encroaching along the block. I see why staff approved it though. I mean, it gets to the density, it gets to to all of the things that Corridor 6 warrants. I just have a hard time moving it into the block. So I guess I'll stop there. Thank you.
Hillary, can you tell us where along here are the bus stations? Are they like in front of Midtown Global Market?
You are asking a question I cannot answer off the top of my head.
The applicant
On
might.
Lake Street.
Okay. Yeah.
There is one in front of Global Market. I cannot, I don't have access to the internet to pull up.
It sounds like someone has the answer in the public hearing when we get to that.
Okay.
Are there any other questions before we? Commissioner Gordon?
Thank you, Chair Meyer. Staff, could you please explain the difference in FAR and setbacks from Interior 3 to Corridor 6, how that varies? I know we know the height difference, but do the setbacks vary wildly, or does the FAR as well?
So it's based on whether it is urban. It's not on the built form. It's on the no, it is in the built form. FAR and setbacks. The FAR will be higher in the Corridor 6 than in the Interior 3. As far as setbacks are still, because there is residential on the block face, there will still be setbacks along 12th. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep all my facts straight. There will be setbacks required on the south from the proposed development to the residential windows in the building to the south, and there would be a reflective front yard setback here. But those would be the setbacks. So yes, you can definitely build more in Corridor 6 than Interior 3. In this case, the setbacks won't be wildly different. I mean, the metric, the maximum or the required setback would be the same regardless.
Okay.
If this is approved.
Commissioner Gordon, so to answer specifically, because I do have the luxury of having access to the internet that Hillary doesn't have right now. So there are different factors that go into base zoning. Is it a mixed-use building? Is it a cluster development? Is it, 3 units? If we're talking just a mixed-use development in Interior 3, their maximum FAR would be 1.6. A mixed-use building without any premiums in Corridor 6 would be allowed a base maximum FAR of 3.4.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Not seeing any, so we'll open the public hearing. Is the applicant here to speak to this? Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about your project.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Michael Margulies. I'm with Newton Res LLC, and I'm assisting the owners of the property with this project. I'll take just a couple of seconds to emphasize 2 or 3 points. The first is to reiterate what Ms. Dvorak said with respect to that this is essentially a technical adjustment to the original comp plan that was prepared for the site. Every parcel in town is given a designation. Unfortunately, the 3 parcels that are connected to 1119 are owned by the same family, but they're held under different property names or entity names. And you would not have known just from a record search that these are all related parties. And I take quite seriously the fact that if at the time that the comp plan was prepared and passed, that had the city known this, it would have these would all have been linked together. The second thing I want to emphasize is that we went through the city required engagement plan, and we presented these concepts to both staff and to the members of the community. There were concerns raised, as there always are, with respect to the possible development. Some of the community members liked the idea, some of them liked the concept. Some of them had concerns about how this was going to work, what it was going to look like, how the development would impact them. And so that really raises the point that this is a comp plan amendment request. This is not a land use application. It's not up for site plan review. There will be lots of questions, and referring to Commissioner Connolly's concerns about how is this going to look in the neighborhood and how is it going to operate, we'll we'll lay that out as part of a site plan review, part of the land use application, and we'll take the questions and have to address your concerns seriously at that time, and I know there will be serious ones. But what this allows us to do is to make the technical correction that we talked about. It allows us to take a site that truly needs to be redeveloped. You're familiar with that section of the block. It really needs to have something positive done. And if we had been able to acquire 1115, we would have had a site on 1119 in combination that would have allowed us to build some housing that would work really well. But we're unable to do that. But what this will allow us to at least begin to do is consideration of how to build housing that is needed in this corridor, that is very consistent with the corridor around it. If you look at all the red color on the north and the northeast and the east, it's consistent with that. And this will allow us to build a project that has considerably a high level of affordable housing on a transit corridor that just begs for this. So I look at this as an opportunity to come back to you and show you that this works from a density, from an operating standpoint, and from an integration of the neighborhood standpoint. So I think this is the first step, but a necessary one to allow us to come back and prove that the site plan will work. I stand for any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there questions for the applicant? Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah, I have a question about how many people were at the community meeting. I believe it was on January 27th. Do you know?
I think I was there, I think 19 or 20.
19 or 20?
Yeah, we had a good turnout on a cold winter night.
So we're basing this were there translators there? Because I know there's a lot of Spanish speakers along Lake Street.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Any
hear you.
translators? Like into
There
other
was
languages?
not a translator there. I don't recall that there was anybody who required the need of a translator.
So we're basing this upsell on like 20 people. And even in those 20, there were people that didn't, that were objecting. I'm just trying to get an understanding of what we're making the decision based
Sure.
on what kind of level of engagement with the community surrounding this property, properties.
The Chair and Commissioner Thompson, we followed the requirements of the city in preparing an engagement plan, of going through various drafts of the engagement plan, getting it approved by CPED, giving notice to even a broader range of people than the code requires, setting up emails to ask people to come, and then holding a meeting. I can't, actually getting 20 people at a community meeting sometimes is better than I oftentimes see. When we sort of think about what the over-under is going to be, that's pretty unusual. And the one thing we reminded the people who attended, as well as the community members, is that this, again, and I sort of repeating myself, but this is one of several opportunities and several community engagements that will occur. There'll be mandatory public community meetings as if we apply for a rezoning, as we apply for a land use application. This will reoccur, and we will hope the community will continue to be engaged.
Thank you for that. I agree that sometimes 19 people in a cold January is a good turnout. I do have another question. Why is, on behalf of people you're representing, why not just try to build something within the current plan for the neighborhood?
That's a great question. The idea is to build housing and to get enough housing, to get a sizable enough project to make it economically viable to build. You need a certain critical mass.
Mm-hmm.
And, we could probably build 20 units, but not economically, and certainly not for affordable, to make a majority of them affordable housing. So at that point, it's just not viable.
Well, but you already said that we aren't at that place to talk about what kind of units they're going to be. as we like consider upzoning this, right? So
Sure.
it's like apples and oranges right now.
We know about what level of development will have to occur to make the project viable, and we think that combining these lots will allow us to do that. Now, we still have to go through the land use and site review process, which will affect site setbacks, will affect height.
Did you, yeah, oh, sorry, yeah, please. We're getting into the weeds.
Yes, and so a couple of things. And I'm also going to answer a question that nobody asked yet, but.
I probably was going to try.
We had 2 comp plan amendment applications on the agenda tonight, and you may have noticed that one included the entire project. That was the 1501 Johnson. We brought in the comp plan amendment, the rezoning, the site plan review, and the variance. This one is the comp plan amendment only. When we adopted Minneapolis 2040 and anticipated the need for more comp plan amendments than we had previously because we now have a site-specific built form map, we laid out a process that has a sequential review, meaning first you have to apply for your comp plan amendment, get that all the way through the city's process and the Metropolitan Council's process, and then come back for the rest of your land use applications for the proposed development. We did that primarily because there were concerns from the city attorney's office about our ability to meet the 60-day law, meaning we have to act within 60 days. We can extend that to 120, but without knowing how long the Met Council process was going to take in there, we were nervous about meeting that. So we laid out a sequential process. We've done a few of these now and thought maybe we need to revisit that, but we needed enough data to know if we could meet the 60-day law with a concurrent review. So we have given a couple of developers the option of doing that, but they needed to give us a 60-day extension up front, which is why it's a bit of a risk on the part of the applicant to be a test case. 1501 Johnson was a test case for that. We had one other that was a test case that was like a remnant rail parcel off University near Annie's Parlor, which no one probably even noticed that one because it was pretty bare bones. So the applicant is following the process that was laid out by staff by bringing forward the comp plan amendment by itself. Once we had enough of these, we were going to come to the Planning Commission at a COW meeting and say, what do you think? I think based on how the conversation is going tonight, I'm getting a pretty good picture of, perhaps what the preference of the commission would be, but that is a conversation we're going to have. So the applicant is bringing this forward because that's the way the process needs to go, to first ask for the comp plan amendment and then to come back through. The materials that are included in the packet do show the building that they're intended to build, but it's not to the point where it would be for a site plan review application because this step has to come first.
That makes sense, and I appreciate that clarification.
And then I was also just going to note, to develop the site the way it is right now, there's only one possible path forward because there's split zoning on the site currently, so they can't combine the parcels and build one building with the zoning that's on there right now unless they applied something called the split zoning overlay district, which basically means the part that's in the corridor 6 has to conform to the corridor 6, which has some minimum height and FAR requirements, and the part that's in the interior 3 would have to comply with the interior 3, which is an incredibly difficult exercise to go through.
Which actually is precisely the kind of thing that I was trying to lead toward, is like, why are we, it's the encapsulation of the lots that is one of the bigger challenges for me, because of, you have different fire codes, you have different green spaces that you're missing, that suddenly, like, if we're changing this, that encroaches considerably onto those neighbors just one lot down that I'm sure they didn't sign up for when they bought their home. So that is precisely, and I get that you have, but that is the goal, right? Is like, even if we're trying to be doing timing to give the applicant space, the goal is this 7-story building where it's all together. So I do believe it's pertinent to talk about it. So thank you for your time, and I don't think I have any questions, and thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate that clarification.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll proceed with the rest of the public hearing. How many of you wanted to speak? Can you all raise your hand? 4 of you? Okay. You can go in order from left to right here. Tell us your name, your address if you're comfortable, and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Josh Kroll. My address is 3024 12th Avenue. I am adjacent to these properties. So, thank you, Chair Meyer. The concept we got at the hearing in January was 80 units. The agenda here, the report that you're receiving says 90 units. I counted the number of houses on the street that will exist when if this project were to go forward, and there are only 15 houses on the street, a couple of them multi-use. We're going to be quintupling the size of people living on one street that's already plenty busy, and across the way is a project that has an event center, a restaurant, and something that provides school buses for students going on, which is a great use for that property, but we're already getting busier as it is. This will make it much worse. It's going to be real challenging looking out. As you said, I didn't plan when I bought my house 25 years ago to be looking out of, and it's not a duplex. It's a single family home, 1,200 square feet, looking at 7-story building. The project that they provided to us would have a parking ramp to underground parking that I'll be looking out from my kitchen windows. I'm making meals, I'll see vehicles go back and forth, and I don't even know where they're going to plan to put that snow. Are they going to put it in the alley? Are they going to put it in the street? Because that's a lot of snow to move if we ever have snowy winters again. The neighbors who showed up, and I will say there were probably, the number of 20 was probably accurate at that hearing. What wasn't said is the majority of people, there were some people in support, I will not deny that, but the majority of the people who lived nearby within a block or two were either neutral or not in support of a project of this scale. It's so much for this space. You know, I don't see any other 7-story buildings in my neighborhood on Lake Street, other than the Sears building, Global Marketplace, Midtown Global. Nothing is that tall. 5-story, 4-story, not 7-story. It's really hard to imagine the scale of this. I feel like I'm going to be living in Up. I'm going to be the old man and I don't have balloons to take my house away. It's really hard. And to your question on bus stops, it used to be at 12th, they're now at 13th, but that will only be served by the 21. Folks will have, in 10th also, those are the bus stops for the 21, but if you want to get on the bus rapid transit, you're going to have to go 4 blocks to either Bloomington or Chicago to get the bus rapid transit that they're installing. So in terms of, it's not as convenient as it could be, as it used to be, with the inclusion of bus rapid transit and having to walk to access that more frequent service. So I just want to answer that question. Yeah.
I've been informed that we have until 6:30, so I'm going to ask each person to limit their comments to 2 minutes from here on out. But thank you for your testimony.
Okay, questions.
Also, sir, if you'd be so kind, and anyone else who comes to speak, if you'd be willing, if you'd be willing to come and sign up over here for our record. Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Next speaker.
Can this be? My name is Jason Byers, 3039 12th Avenue South. I live on the street that'll be impacted. I've got a picture from a random day on the, can you guys see that?
No.
By chance?
Can we turn that on? All right.
Might be hard to see.
We can see it.
Okay. So a picture from a random day taken from the middle of the street looking out to Lake Street. As you can see, there are no parking spots. And as my neighbor Josh just mentioned, to put a 80 to 90 unit building right on that corner with only, in the original plan that they said that they were going to have is 30 or so parking spots underground, and everybody else is parking, I don't know where. So how people are going to be carrying their groceries to their apartments, where they are going to, the business people who are living, have buildings on the other side of the street, where their customers are going to park. This building also calls for business space on the lower level. That's the plan that was shared. I don't know how they're going to have a functioning business when no one can park there to use whatever they're going to be trying to sell there. We are, as Josh mentioned as well, so he is accurate. Of all the people who showed up at that meeting, everyone who was on that street, who lives on the street, was very concerned about this project. But I also want to note that everyone there was also excited about developing this corner, and also for having people live here, having new neighbors and people who can live with us and be a part of this great community. It's the size of the building, it's the poor planning around parking, and the impact to the neighborhood, which is the concern. It's also worth noting that this property has undergone a dramatic decline since the current owners have purchased it. So we've lived on this block for 15 years, and for most of that time, that corner was relatively stable. The building was kept up, and it was not beautiful, but it was kept up and repaired when things were broken. The current owners, the building has, if you drive by that building on Lake Street, it's the worst, absolute worst building on all of Lake Street, and has been for years, ever since the current owners took that property over. They are not taking care of graffiti, they're not taking care of broken windows. The building that we had the community meeting in, I'll wrap it up real quick. The meeting that we had, the building that we had the community meeting in was also a vacant building on 12th Street, graffiti on the ceiling, or graffiti on the top of the building as well. So I have very little confidence in extending 3 single-family homes and turning them over to this group to develop, and they can't take care of one property very well. How are they going to take care of 90 people? I wouldn't want people that I live in a building like that.
Thank you.
All right.
Next speaker.
Hello, Chairperson Myers and Commissioners. My name is Jared Cruz. Thank you. I, along with my wife, live on 3028 12th Avenue South, so we're 2 houses right next to Josh away from the proposed development. I have lived in this house for 21 years, and we raised our daughter in this house. I am in support of increased low-income housing as well as density. However, it's really hard to imagine a 7-story building, as we've been presented, with possible 90 units in our residential block. I don't know of any comparable height building in Phillips or Powderhorn. There is, I think, a 5-story on 12th near the Greenway, but of course that's on the Greenway. Very different kind of situation. It's really hard to imagine anything more than a 4 with the kind of traffic that we get from, there's also apartments on the other side of 31st on 12th. There's Lake Street traffic. There's parking for the new business, as Josh has mentioned. So we already are dealing with a lot of traffic coming through the neighborhood and a lot of parking issues. Besides the fact, as has been mentioned, it's hard to imagine an increase of like 5 or 6 times our current density. It doesn't seem right that our particular block would be hit with such a density increase. I'm fine with a density increase, as I said, but I think that's a little bit unreasonable. I guess I'll stop there, but just to say, that, again, I think it has to be reasonable, and we're willing to, I think, support low-income housing if we can keep our neighborhood from being, increased by a level of 5, which is a little bit too high. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Kristen Blue. I live at 3028 12th Avenue South. It's my spouse who just talked. I think, this particular hearing is about the rezoning, and I have concerns about changing single-family to more density for everything that's been said before. But I think of there's a lot of kids on the block that play in their front yards and play in their backyards, and traffic is already a thing. And it's bringing babies out to the cars when we've got so much density there. It's just hard to imagine. And so I personally would be against any premium to take it higher, which I know is for the future. I have serious concerns about changing the interior 3 part to a corridor 6. Would like to see it developed. I know that it's a complicated thing. I'm in support of low-income housing, but the level and density is where my concern is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to testify? All right, not seeing any. I'll close the public hearing. I'm going to share my thoughts and then turn to other commissioners. I strongly support this application. If we're going to address our climate goals, this is the type of place where we need to be allowing a lot more people to live, to be on the B-line bus rapid transit, close to a grocery store and all the other different stores at the Midtown Global Market, a block away from the Greenway. This is a place where people can live and choose not to drive if they don't want to. And our task today is to find whether this application fits within the goals of the 2040 plan, and staff have listed a lot of different goals that it reaches, like almost looks like quite a few goals around affordable housing and commercial goods and services. I think it's really important to work to revitalize Lake Street and provide more customers for those businesses that will help sustain Midtown Global Market and other nearby businesses. To respond to something Commissioner Conley said, I think there's a problem if we concentrate all the density right on the main corridors. If we do that, we're on the one hand meeting the goal of being close to the transit stations, but then we're concentrating all the people where all the noise and air pollution is. I feel like the ideal places to have added density are the places that are close to the transit stations, which I would define as being within a half mile, which is about a 10-minute walk, close to greenways and things like that, but far enough removed that you're just off the corridor, so you don't have as much noise and air pollution. So I definitely think that this is the type of thing that meets the 2040 plan's goals, and as we contemplate the 2050 plan, I think we should actually go a little bit further in. Commissioner Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our item here is pretty cut and dry. We have been given significant evidence that changing from an urban neighborhood to corridor mixed use makes sense according to the 2040 plan, and so that's kind of where we are. What I would highly recommend, because the applicant mentioned that there, and as we heard, there's going to be several other parts of this project that will come before the Planning Commission. I would highly encourage more intentional conversations with residents and more frequent, really help residents design what could be possible here in a way that works for all. I think that compromise can be found. I would also really encourage, we have talked before on this body about the inclusion of public works types of efforts in these projects, and so things like speed bumps on the block or things like mid-block crosswalks, anything to make it safer for the pedestrians that we want to get onto Lake Street, to patronize the businesses, to make it 4 blocks to the B-Line station, etc. But there are things that can be incorporated into a project that make it palatable and easier for the residents who obviously want more neighbors to feel as though they're a part of the project. So that's something that I would just really stress, knowing that I will need to vote in favor of this. It just makes sense. But as further applications come before the body, I'm going to want to see robust engagement and the inclusion of public works to make this street 12th a lot safer, given that there will be more people. And that could even include things like, what does the building lighting look like? What does the plants and all of that, what do those things look like? But I really think that, we've seen other projects where the developer worked to get a crosswalk from mid development to the other side of the street. Like there's just ways that we can really hear from our neighbors, and I think creative ideas like that are what can really make or break a project like this. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Meyer. I'm also going to be in support of this project. I think that it matches with the stated goals of the city very closely, like Chair Meyer said. I think that 6 lots adjoining a major commercial corridor with transit is reasonable. It seems like good policy to me. We're talking about this comprehensive plan amendment and whether to we're not talking about the building, we're talking about the policy, and this seems like good policy. In regards to the neighborhood street, I think one thing that the applicant could consider, and the applicant is free to do whatever is allowed by zoning code, but one thing they could consider is a step-down transition at the end of the building. So we've seen that in other areas throughout the city. And we see this in our zoning code. We see where we have corridor 6 up by Lake Street, and then we have interior 3, and we have interior 2. So I think that one thing that the applicant could consider here to appease some of the neighbors is, rather than having a 7 or 8-story mass all the way to the end, maybe a couple lots worth, maybe 50 or 100 feet of a little bit smaller built form mass. So I think that's something to consider for the applicant, and that would go a long way in your neighborhood meetings. But I'm definitely going to be in support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Meyer. Did an engineer look at this at all in the idea of what is going to happen to these single-family homes as you dig deep to create a 7-story building when Southwest LRT nearly shook the foundation of high-rises by Bede-Makaska? I honestly don't understand the incomplete nature of our thinking on this. And I also don't know what Chair Meyer says are climate goals. Getting rid of green space? Importing in all the building materials? I would like to think that our climate goals involve locally fixing up what we have. That's just me. But we talk about goals, and I'm just going to read. It says, affordable and accessible housing. I know that low-income, because a lot of my students, low-income families who are largely Spanish-speaking live in this community, and they have a lot of multi-generational people who live in the same house that we are going to be displacing. And I don't know that we're caring about is zoning. So these are the things that go into my consideration when I will definitely not be supporting this. Because to me, Minneapolis 2040 was already upzoned. It doesn't mean that it's all been built in, right? So we were already jumping from single-family home to potentially 3-story with however many units could fit inside of it. That's fine. But so now we're going from single-family home to a high-rise. And I watched that kind of really ridiculous planning happen in California, where somebody mentioned the movie Up. I actually lived in a 7-story apartment building across the street from a single-family home surrounded by towers. I got to know the people who lived there, and they told me how it was their grandmother's house who wouldn't sell out when everyone sold out. It was such a weird story, but I was like, that's what LA did, and I don't know that that's the wisest way to put this together. So I don't support this. Again, I know how the wind blows, but I'm not going to let it blow me over this time. So I'm not supporting this.
Yeah, I'm sort of wavering on this. What I really liked was this concept of having sort of the 3 projects together: the zoning, the development project, and the comp plan, because it gives us a more comprehensive picture of what's going to happen. If we rezone this now, there's just no telling. So this applicant is here now, but who knows, right? We don't know. And so that's where I'm leaning. I think it's really important because I think it also gives us a lot more opportunity to talk about those negotiations, maybe the step downs, all those other things that are going to make it work. And I'm also sensitive to the conversation about owners being responsible. I worked for the city for many years, and responsible ownership in my work life career was really important. And anyway, I am leaning, I think as I'm talking, against it because I want to see all 3 together. Thank you.
Commissioner Baxley.
Thank you, Chairman Meyer. I agree with pretty much everything we said. I mean, this is a tough issue. I will be supporting this because I do think it makes sense. I am extremely empathetic with folks on the transition between of these zoning areas. It's incredibly challenging, but I believe we can build our way out of this in such a way that provides the density we need and can make those transitions. I think we think so often that the front of the building, the Lake Street, is the front yard, while forgetting perhaps the back is the front door for the neighbors to the north. And I think I encourage the design team and the owner to consider that every time. I think it's a great responsibility to bring these projects into our neighborhood with such great transformation. We should take those seriously. So I'll be supporting staff recommendation on this.
Would you like to make a motion, Commissioner Baxley?
I'll make a motion to support staff findings for the comp amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question, probably for Ms. Helene. What are the next steps on this project following this vote?
So the first next steps that relate specifically to the comp plan amendment is that it needs to go to the city council. So it will go to the biz committee of the city council and the full city council. If approved there, it will then go to the Metropolitan Council for their consideration. Once the comp plan amendment is fully approved, then the applicant would come back through and do the next steps on the project, which would include, at a minimum, an application to rezone the properties to match the zoning or the comp plan amendment, a site plan review application, and any assorted applications that are needed to bring the project forward. So there is an additional, notification step. We obviously encourage the applicant to work with, anyone who's engaged in the process thus far as they continue those next steps.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. I think since there's opportunity for further discussion, obviously at the Business Housing and Zoning Committee, I'd be curious to see kind of how the discussion furthers, with also the opportunity for the council member of the area to get to weigh in, because I do think there are just really good points that were brought up by commissioners, especially in regards to the residents. I love that idea of step down that Commissioner Wagner brought up, and then other opportunities to engage with the neighbors here. I really appreciate all of you coming here and some of you stating your interest in increased zoning in the area and increased density in housing, but also the considerations that you need to make here. So it sounds like there's a pretty deliberative process before us. So I think today, I'm inclined to support it so it can continue to move forward. And I encourage the constituents that are here today to be engaged in that next process of business housing and zoning and connect with your council member there.
All right. Anyone else?
I'm inclined to say no because I would like to see them all together. I think it's the cart before the horse in some ways, because if it wasn't zoned and before, or it wasn't the comp plan before, simply because of the ownership at the time, and had we known, I think that's a really complex argument. So, and I do like what we saw with the Johnson's property just now. I felt that was a lot more comprehensive, and it really made me more comfortable with the decision.
Okay.
Thank you.
Not seeing anyone else, so I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Baxley.
Aye.
Chowdhury.
Aye.
Conley.
Aye.
Gordon.
Aye.
Jones.
Nay.
Thompson.
No.
Wagner.
Aye.
Meyer.
Aye.
We have 6 ayes and 2 nays.
That motion is adopted. And that concludes our discussion items, and now we'll turn to our resolution of appreciation for former Commissioner Alyssa Olson. She wasn't able to join us today, but she is watching with her newborn son, Glenn. And I've got a photo of Glenn if people want to come over and see him. So I'm just going to read off this resolution that we prepared to honor her. So a resolution of appreciation for Alyssa Olson for her dedicated service to the Minneapolis City Planning Commission. Whereas Alyssa has served on the City of Minneapolis City Planning Commission since 2019. Whereas Alyssa has participated in over 140 Planning Commission public hearings, making decisions and recommendations on over 1,529 land use applications, and adoption of 1 comprehensive plan and numerous zoning code text amendments. And whereas Alyssa has provided substantial expertise related to planning and development, and whereas Alyssa served as president of the Planning Commission from 2022 to 2024, and whereas Alyssa served as vice president of the Planning Commission from 2021 to 2022, whereas Alyssa served as secretary of the Planning Commission in 2020, whereas Alyssa served on the Planning Commission in its 100th anniversary, and whereas Alyssa has demonstrated tremendous dedication and generosity in sharing both her time and knowledge, whereas the Minneapolis City Planning Commission wishes to formally recognize Alyssa's dedicated service to the City Planning Commission and City, now therefore be it resolved by the City Planning Commission and the staff to the City Planning Commission of the City of Minneapolis that we thank Alyssa Olson for her faithful and constructive service in extending the progress of this city and in promoting the welfare of its people, and that we extend her our best wishes for good health and happiness, trusting that the friendships and understanding built in our mutual undertakings will be with us always. So, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That is adopted. Thank you, Alyssa.
And my apologies to Alyssa for not having that at her last meeting. I ended up being sick that day, and we didn't get it, so.
Yes. All right. That was our final item. Our next Planning Commission meeting is April 28th, and we have no committee of the whole this Thursday. Are there any other updates from staff or
I have
commissioners?
one very, very important update that we need to get in 1 minute, which is we don't have committee of the whole this week, but on May 15th at 6 p.m., we have the joint Planning Commission click meeting. And that's not a cow meeting, that requires full quorum of the Planning Commission. So we need a minimum of 5 commissioners there to have that very important meeting. Again, that's May 15th at 6 p.m.
All right, May 15th. Put it on your calendars.
That's all I have.
Anyone else? All right, we are adjourned.
It's like Alyssa Olson Day. I love it.
Yep.